Some places exist quietly in the background of maps, rarely attracting attention beyond the people who live there. Others become remembered not because of one isolated event, but because strange incidents seem to happen there repeatedly over time. Events that resist simple explanation, leave behind little physical evidence, and blur the boundary between history, memory, and testimony. During the mid-20th century, a remote island in Indonesia became the setting for a series of unsettling reports that defied easy classification. Fishermen, villagers, and occasional outsiders all described encounters that did not fit comfortably within local folklore, modern science, or ordinary misunderstanding. What emerged was not a single dramatic incident, but a pattern, fragmented, quiet, and deeply unsettling. Alor Island lies far from the routes most travelers ever take. Positioned near the eastern edge of Indonesia, the island rises sharply from the sea with steep cliffs, rocky inlets, dense forests, and rugged mountains cutting across its interior. Even today, reaching Alor requires deliberate effort. It is not somewhere people simply pass through by accident. The landscape itself reinforces the feeling of isolation. Roads exist, but they follow the terrain rather than controlling it. Beyond a handful of coastal towns, large parts of the island remain quiet and undeveloped, with nights illuminated only by lanterns, cooking fires, and scattered village lights. In the 1950s, however, that isolation was far more complete. At the time, Alor had very limited contact with the outside world. There were no regular transport routes, few reliable communications, and little sustained connection to larger regional centers. Inland settlements were connected mainly by narrow footpaths crossing hills and forests. Travel was slow, difficult, and often avoided unless necessary. Life revolved around routine, fishing, farming, and tightly connected family communities. Stories passed between generations were usually practical rather than sensational. They warned about storms, dangerous paths, accidents, or places considered unsafe after dark. Experiences that unsettled people were rarely discussed openly. There was a quiet, cultural understanding that not everything required explanation. Strange experiences were often spoken about cautiously, if at all, usually only among close relatives or trusted members of the community. That context matters because the reports that later emerged from Alor did not come from a place known for exaggeration or spectacle. They came from communities where making extraordinary claims often brought discomfort rather than attention. And that is part of what makes the events of 1959 so difficult to dismiss. According to multiple accounts, the incidents began during a warm evening in a small coastal settlement along the northern side of the island. After sunset, several villagers noticed a bright light offshore. At first, nobody considered it alarming. Fishing boats were common in the region, and the initial reaction was mild curiosity rather than concern. But as people continued watching, they realized the light was behaving strangely. Rather than moving steadily across the water like an ordinary vessel, it appeared almost perfectly stationary. Witnesses claimed the light remained fixed relative to the coastline for an unusually long time. It neither drifted with the waves nor moved naturally with the current. Then, after several minutes, the light reportedly intensified before separating into two smaller points and merging together again. No sound accompanied the display. There were no engines, splashes, or mechanical noises of any kind. As more villagers noticed the phenomenon, curiosity slowly gave way to discomfort. One account claimed the light eventually lifted away from the ocean itself, rising silently above the shoreline before disappearing inland beyond the trees. The following morning, residents discovered strange disturbances in nearby farmland. Sections of vegetation had been flattened into irregular patterns. Certain patches of ground appeared compressed, as though heavy pressure had been unevenly applied across the area. Yet there were no clear footprints, drag marks, missing tools, or signs of theft. The land simply looked disturbed by something unfamiliar. The incident may have been forgotten had similar sightings not continued over the nights that followed. Witnesses again described glowing lights appearing silently near the village. Sometimes they hovered close to treetop height, before suddenly vanishing without explanation. By the third night, the atmosphere throughout the settlement had noticeably changed. People remained awake intentionally. Fires were kept burning later than usual, and conversations became quieter and more cautious. The lights were no longer viewed as curiosities, but as something returning repeatedly with purpose. Soon afterward came reports of direct encounters. One villager later described standing outside his home late at night, when he suddenly became aware of a presence nearby. Looking toward the edge of the vegetation, he saw a small, upright figure partially concealed behind a bush roughly 50 feet away. According to his description, its proportions appeared unnatural. Thin limbs, an oversized head, pale skin, and large dark eyes fixed directly toward him. For several moments, neither moved. The witness later claimed he felt unable to react properly, not frozen by fear exactly, but trapped in a strange state of calm immobility, as though movement itself somehow felt impossible. When the figure finally shifted position, its movement appeared stiff and unnatural, almost mechanical rather than fluid. Then, without warning, it disappeared into the surrounding darkness. No footprints or sounds of departure were ever found. As rumors spread between villages, more accounts began surfacing. Witnesses repeatedly described silent figures watching from a distance before vanishing once they realized they had been noticed. Many also reported an unusual physical sensation during these encounters. Difficulty moving naturally, confusion, or a strange sense of mental detachment while being observed. Not every sighting involved humanoid figures. Some villagers instead described luminous aerial objects hovering silently above forests or farmland during dawn and dusk. Witnesses claimed the objects moved unlike conventional aircraft, sometimes accelerating rapidly before disappearing completely from view. What later troubled researchers was not one dramatic account, but the consistency between separate testimonies. Many witnesses had never spoken with one another, yet their descriptions remained strikingly similar. The emotional responses followed the same pattern as well. Confusion first, then unease, followed by long periods of silence and reluctance to discuss the experiences publicly. For some people, the effects reportedly continued after the encounters themselves ended. Several witnesses later described exhaustion, headaches, vivid dreams, insomnia, or persistent feelings of being watched long after the sightings occurred. Others claimed to develop strange marks on their skin that faded gradually over several days without explanation. Family members also noticed behavioral changes. Previously reliable individuals became withdrawn, anxious, or reluctant to leave their homes after dark. No clear medical explanation was ever identified. At around the same time, villagers also reported unusual animal behavior. Dogs barked toward empty areas. Livestock became difficult to control, and some animals reportedly refused to enter certain locations after sunset. Individually, these details may not appear significant. Taken together, however, they created a growing sense that something unfamiliar had briefly disturbed the normal rhythm of life on the island. Years later, Fragments of these stories slowly began reaching outsiders who visited Alor. Researchers, travelers, and administrators occasionally heard references to strange sightings during private conversations with local residents. Most witnesses spoke cautiously, often refusing to give names or exact dates. Few seemed interested in publicity or attention. That reluctance only deepened the mystery surrounding the reports. Attempts to explain the encounters remain inconclusive. Some researchers believe the experiences may have resulted from isolation, environmental stress, psychological suggestion, or unusual perceptual states triggered by unfamiliar conditions. Others argue the consistency between independent testimonies makes simple misinterpretation difficult to accept. Theories involving non-human intelligence have also been proposed. Interestingly, the reported entities never behaved aggressively. They did not communicate, threaten witnesses, or actively pursue interaction. Instead, they appeared almost observational, emerging briefly, watching silently, and then withdraw without confrontation. That detached behavior has led some researchers to speculate the encounters represented moments of accidental exposure rather than deliberate contact. Whatever occurred on Alor Island during those months remains unresolved. The reports never formed a complete narrative. They survived only as fragments carried through memory, testimony, and quiet conversation. Yet despite time, distance, and uncertainty, the accounts continue resembling one another with unsettling precision. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect is not what the story suggests, but what they refuse to provide. They offer no reassurance, no definitive explanation, no final resolution, only the lingering possibility that something unknown briefly crossed paths with isolated communities on a remote island and quietly disappeared again.